All right, we're good. Thanks.
Yeah.
Love it when a tech guy says, oh, I've never seen that before.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it should see us now. We should be all right.
You're on our network. Yeah, we have a lot of YouTube videos blocked.
On your network. See it.
No, probably not.
Send Richard an email and ask him if he's
See if he can see.
he can see the video.
That's really good. We've got Jones. He seems just like that. Can see and hear us. Yes, I can see and hear you.
Okay, good. All right, we're good. Okay, we have the technology straightened out. Thanks to Sebastian for taking the phone call. So we'll call this meeting of this work session of the Montoursville Area School District Board of Directors to order on this February 28th, 2023. And the time is 7:08 p.m. And I ask the secretary to call the roll.
Mr. Albert is absent this evening. Mr. Badger.
Here.
Dr. Beery is absent this evening. Dr. LaCrone.
Here.
Dr. Mathers.
Here.
Mr. Schimmel.
Here.
Mr. Snell is absent this evening. Mr. Ulmer. And Mr. Young.
Here. Is anybody actually watching the video? We're going to get a little ringing. Anybody still plugged into it? I can hear a little bit of feedback. It might be. Okay. Yeah. All right. I'd ask all present to rise and join me in the pledge to the flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag. Hey. For all. Our first item of business is a presentation by the business manager on a review of the audit. So Brandy.
This is a review of the audit that ended June 30th, 2022. So the information is 8 months old. And as of now, we're working in 3 years. We're working in the current year, the past year, and the future year right now. So we'll go through this real quickly here. Here's a summary to get you started. This is where we were budgeted, and this is where we came out. As a total revenue, we had revenues almost 1.5 more than what was budgeted, and we had 613,000 more in expenditures. A lot of this is due to COVID stuff, additional expenditures, additional revenues due to COVID. We're in more of an unpredictable time as we go through the last couple of years, and we're getting more into more of a predictable time as we move forward, which will be nice. These are set up the same way as all your budget presentations, all prior presentations. So I will skip around quickly just to give a brief overview of things. When last month you approved the real estate taxes that were turned over to county. I had said, our collection rate was up. And as you see here, we budget at a 95% collection rate. And we came in higher than that because we see that we received 74,000 more than that. So that's one of the higher impacts there. The earned income tax, we had budgeted at 4 million. That came in about 74,000 also over. So what that means is people are making more money. So because that earned income tax rate doesn't change. So there's more money being brought into the community, more earnings in the community. So we're receiving more money there. Real estate transfer tax, there were a lot of home sales in the past year. Interest rates were low. Houses were going up for sale and off the market in a few days. So we were seeing a lot of turnaround in housing there. So we were almost up 50,000 there. Delinquent real estate taxes, you'll see we're up there also. And if you remember me commenting, we don't have as much in delinquent real estate taxes because people are paying these taxes off. So that's a good thing, but it will in the future, our delinquent real estate tax collection annually, we may see drop down a little bit. So we won't be able to count on that revenue as much because of people are paying their taxes. Earnings on investments, we were down, but you'll see that will be coming right back up in the future because we are in a 4.5–5% earning on investments right now, and earnings are going to go back up to where we were seeing them making a lot more. So that is an overview of those items. Yeah.
It's good that the delinquent real estate is increasing. That's good to hear that folks are able to pay that, and then that's a good thing. But what that really means is that when they're paying, they'll be paying perhaps early or on time, and so we won't be realizing any kind of. I mean, we're still going to get. Yeah, so we're going to get the revenue in. It's just not going to be penalized, but
more real-time revenue and less delayed. So
okay,
we just need to be careful and watch trend with that. This may be a one-year fluke because the market was really hot last year in housing. Houses were coming on the market and they were going off the market within days. So, and when you're buying, when there's that buying and selling of housing, it's the paying of the real estate taxes too, because that's part of the sale. So if we have a lot of houses now that are on mortgages, then we're going to see an increase in our real estate revenue because the mortgage is being paid through escrow more than likely. So we'll have to watch it to see what it trends, and that'll be, over the next 3 to 5 years. The housing market has slowed a little bit, but it's still, houses are coming on and going off rather quickly. So it'll be something interesting to watch over the next couple of years and see what happens. But it can have an impact. Athletic admissions was up about $5,000. IDA funding, we always just base that off of the prior year, and it had increased 15,000. That goes up and down. So we could see that go down or we could see that go up. We still had some CARES pass-through money that wasn't budgeted come through at the IU level, which was 76,000. We didn't have any facilities revenue because we were still kind of in that COVID era. Tuition payments was down a little bit, and I say that's due to COVID too, because we didn't have as many kids out in other placements or in placements here, because those are mainly things that we bill other school districts for kids that come here for when they go out of the classroom. Miscellaneous revenue though was up, and this means our teachers and our staff were still busy. They were getting those smaller grants that make a huge difference so that they can do different programs, different things in their classrooms. So those are revenues that you can't count on because some years we may have a lot of them, other years we don't have nearly as much. But those are those little grants that are out there that the STEM gets often, and we're able to bring that revenue in. So that was up 112. So overall, our local revenue was up about 450,000. So, and you can see where that is and where that was trending for that year. Now on to state revenue. Basic ed subsidy was up 176,000, and how we budget basic ed subsidy in the past was we just based it off of what we received the year prior, so that increased a little bit. FICA and other income from the state, those are based off of wages. So if our wages are higher than what we thought, then that increases also. So we had a little bit higher wages than what was originally budgeted, and that increased our FICA by our refund back for that of almost $8,000. Our other tuition payments from the state is when we have some kids in other placements. That is not a typical revenue that we receive, but we had received 42,000 there. Special ed was almost 40,000. And transportation, we see our subsidy for transportation was down to $28,000. Our and that's just basically our specialized transportation fluctuates every year. It fluctuates daily, so we never know where we're exactly going to be with our specialized transportation, which it does end up having a huge impact on our budget. So we'll see that here. The prior year we had more, that's why it was higher. The rental and sinking fund payments, those payments are based on our debt payments that we make. So if you remember in, I think it was September of 2021, we paid off one of our bonds, and well, it wasn't a bond, it was a loan. So we paid that off, and that boosted our payment that we received back, because then when we make the payment, we get the state's share of that payment given to us. So that created an increase of 251,000. Safe Schools grant, we don't budget for that because we don't know when they're going to cut that program. We've had it now for 3 years, I think. And it's been about $35,000 each year. So that's an additional to this. And like I already talked about, the other state and other income from the state, which is your PSERS reimbursement. That was an increase there. So overall, our state revenue, we have an increase of $767,000. Federal revenue, the only big one here is the ESSERS. We had budgeted 1.5 and we received 1.75 million. So that was like a $250,000 increase there. So that's the biggest change there that we see. Other revenue, sale of fixed assets, we can thank Joe for that, selling some of our old stuff. We had some revenue there. These are things that we don't budget for. And insurance recoveries, we had 15,000, and I think that was for legal fees for something. So that is what we had in there. So that's other income that we don't budget for. Expenditures, this just shows you what our expenditures are spent on. Instruction is all activities dealing directly with the interaction of teachers and students, including related costs, which can be directly attributed to the programs of instructions. Support services are services provided by administrative, technical, such as guidance and health, logistical support, to facilitate and enhance instruction. So this is your, your tech department, you know, your guidance and all that. Your library, non-instructional, is non-instructional services to staff and students. And other expenditures are your debt service expenditures transferred to funds. So we will go into these. There we go. Okay. So here I did one slide at the end that is an overall of everything put together, because when we move one thing from one place, I'll give you some examples later on and it'll show at the end. But here are our regular programs. And these here, you'll see the increase in the regular wages of 178,000. This was because we added 2 teachers to the elementary, and we had summer programs that added teacher wages, and then we also had an extra 61,000 in subs for that year. So that created that overage there. Employee benefits, you see, that is linked directly to the 2 extra teachers and the teachers working over the summer, collecting it. They got extra PSERs and stuff on that. So that is all part of that. The 500s, you'll see that we're over just about 80,000. Well, we spent an extra 85,000 in charter schools. So that is where that is coming from. And you see there, we did have some savings in some different categories. And overall, we were overspent in regular education or $347,526. And there are COVID things in here. Supply or property and things that were purchased with the ESSER's money. And they don't just pull out, so you can just take a look at them. But some of this is like those 2 extra teachers were COVID ESSER's funds being paid for. So it looks a lot like there are a lot of extra overages, but actually they were planned through the ESSER's funding.
But we'll still have to pay for them next year without ESSER's funding, is that correct?
Yes, unless we do something differently. If we keep them on, we will not have the ESSER's funding in the next budget. Moving on to special programs. Okay, so here the biggest ones are the 300s, which is IU services. These are unpredictable. As we have students that move in and out that get different services from the IU. And we budget these in March and April, and we don't know what students we're going to have in the fall when they start. So sometimes we get kindergartners that we're not aware of, and that has a big impact. But and usually it's over for the IU services. So here we have the 61,000. Here we good. Yeah, okay. And then for the 500s school costs, we were over in the charter school costs for special education. So that caused an overage of 83,000 in the 500s. Overall, in the special programs area, we were over 140,000.
Randy, can I
Yes.
just go back just for a minute to so the 600 category, did I hear correctly that you've taken out certain supplies that have been covered by Esther's money? Okay,
It
so
just,
we really use $32,000 less of supplies in,
no. It's. If it was originally, and that's why these are confusing, that's why I have it all blocked together at the end. Because sometimes a principal will say, well, I don't need it in the regular education area, but I need it in a different area, like I need it for one of the specials. Or I need it, and they're in a different budgeting category, like the library or tech or something like that, and they'll move money over to cover it. So in the end, you'll see it all together.
but this be like a sheet of paper.
What?
You didn't need it in this area, but I needed it in another area.
Yes,
So in essence, the cost for that sheet of paper went over to the other area.
right.
And didn't appear. Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. That's why I said it's deceiving how it looks here until the end. Okay. Vocational education, we had less students go than what we thought we had in the spring because we budget this in the spring with how many kids are saying, yes, I'm gonna go. And then when they come to school, the following year, they're not gonna go. So we had some savings there of $35,000. Here, other instructional programs. These are your alt ed classrooms and Justice Works and Nittany Learning. So the 300s are of purchase services or changes in some of the IU contracted alt ed stuff and Nittany Learning. And the other big thing was the 500. This is Justice Works, so we had an increase in Justice Works for the 500s. And here is where you see some of those supplies. They were needed more in the alt ed area, and it was probably in programming and stuff. So that is where part of that supplies moves. Okay.
What was it, 300 again?
300 is the IU alt ed and Nittany Learning. Some increase in cost there. So overall, it's an $83,000 increase. Non-public, we spent $123 in supplies for non-public schools. And that's part of the title that we do that. And then, and we never budget for that because we don't know if we're going to even have anyone that qualifies over there. This is the pupil personnel services here. You'll see the wages, and part of that big drop is we had a guidance leave early on in the year, and it was substituted in being paid out of sub wages in this current year here. And because it was being paid out of sub wages, you saw that increase in sub wages, but now you're seeing that decrease here in regular wages. So you're seeing how these, like, they don't tell a true story because of the way it can move from different categories. And that would also be your decrease in employee benefits. The 300s, you see a little bit of a decrease there. That was the IU psychologist. We always budget for extra days there, and she didn't use them all. And that year is what it was looking like, or it came in at a lower price than what we thought. So overall in this area, we see that we didn't spend as much, but technically we kind of did because it was just put into other areas. So we see at an $86,000 lower than what we had originally planned. Oh, what happened? Lost connection. Oh. How do I do? And where's the screen? Watch it. Conference room. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Sorry about that. Okay. Is the day he takes off?
It's just his presence that makes it work.
Yeah.
He planned all this out.
Mhm.
I'm scared.
We got this. Instructional staff services. So here, there was probably like a change in employee benefit midway through the year. So you see a little bit of a decrease there. Your 300s was part of the Tyler purchase along with the 600s was other softwares purchases. And the big one here is the 700s, which is Esser's purchases. You see that this includes your library, your technology, your curriculum, your special ed, supervisors department and staff development. So you see here that this section has some Esser's money built into it because of purchasing the new boards, those new smart boards. I couldn't think of what they were. So that's one of the big purchases that took place in this year, which is puts us over 216,000 there. So moving on.
Funding stream for those. What was the funding stream for those? That wasn't a budgeted over, if you can call it that.
It's Esser's money. It's just, it's, these are hard to manipulate just because there is all that extra, there's almost 2 million extra dollars. There's 1.7 million extra dollars being spent into this budget because of that funding. So it's hard to look at the way we're doing it. It's even hard to follow it looking on the computer screen because you literally have to go line item by line item and look and see what the purchase was and say, oh yeah, that's a one-time Esser, and go through it that way.
Yep.
So that's why it gets so confusing, but we're getting out of that money, so it'll become much more like it has been in the past, and you'll really be able to dig down and see it. And the final screen does really wrap it up pretty nice. So administrative services here. You see the biggest one here is the 700 is property. And when I looked at that, I was like, wow, that's a lot. So then I got digging deeper into that. And that was a bill from Pittsburgh Stage Company here. And that money was spent, that was a grant that came in and for the auditorium here. And that was stuff that was spent in there. So that was why that was a big overage there. And then moving on to, in the overage of the 22,000, I'm sorry, I went back and looked through that and it was payout for vacation days and stuff like that. It wasn't anything other than that.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
Payout for like vacation days. I don't budget for payout for vacation days. And then support services for the pupil health. Here, we're pretty even on everything. This is your nursing services. A little bit more in the 300s, a little bit more in wages and benefits. But again, we had nursing staff here for the summer help. So you see a little bit of an increase there, but overall, we're pretty balanced here in the nursing services. Business office services, here, we're pretty much balanced right on. We have some extra funds in here where we didn't purchase extra stuff, or we thought we were gonna need something and we didn't need it, so we had some savings there. Operation of maintenance and plant, you'll see here, these are pretty much on, but they're off. And this is another example. Joe manages his budget and he moves things around, but he tries to spend only what he was originally budgeted. So if he had to purchase something in a 400, he would not purchase something in a 600 or a 700. So he manages it within his own budget, and he comes in very close every year. So he was right in line where he was supposed to be. Student transportation services, looking at this here. Your 300s are aids, so we see a little bit of an increase in our aid cost there. We also see a little bit of an increase in our 500s, which is our busing. Again, like I said before, we have routes that change every day. And those routes are routes that have the aid on them. So the correlation of the aid increase in cost and the transportation routes changing, those are what has caused that. And then the property is some cameras that had to be purchased. So you see a little bit of an increase there.
Is that number going to stay there?
What number?
The 500?
Again, it changes daily. So,
But it was 125,000 over what you thought it was going to be.
right,
last
so,
year.
so.
I mean, this year, are you seeing it closer to the?
It's closer to what it was, yeah, but again, like we get
Closer what it was.
to what it was the
previously.
previous year, yes. We have a lot of kids on specialized transportation right now. But again, we could have a family move out. And then, I'm getting that going. It's catching up. Yeah, and it's echoing back in here.
It's the mic and the chair.
So. But if we have people move out that are on that specialized transportation, then it drops. So it's a hard call because our regular routes are in place and they're pretty consistent. But it's when we have the specialized transportation that changes every day. And that's what causes the big fluctuations.
You try to put a buffer in, but
Right.
again, as long as it's explainable.
Yeah.
Hey, that's the way it goes.
You can't predict everything.
Sure you can.
I can't, that's for sure.
Maybe those lottery numbers then?
Yeah, please. Student activities you see here, they were down overall. And I think a lot of it is due still to some COVID in there. Because we started out the beginning of the season, the fall season, still pretty much in COVID. So you see a lot of that decrease there.
Again, you see that coming back now this year. Those figures or
I don't know because we're not through all sports yet.
yeah, okay.
So that's hard to say at this point. Here you see the other expenditures, which are your bond, your debt payments, and this is increase, but that was because we paid off one of the loan payments early. So we were able to pay that off a couple years early, which made this actually jump up, but that was a good thing. So, but to get that money, we took that money from capital. That was a capital transfer in, and then it went out. So it's actually not showing as an expense. So this is what I added in here. This is an overall, so you can see all the 100s. So overall in wages, we were over 151,000. In benefits, we were over 20,000. Purchase professional technical services, we were over 112,000. Purchase property services, we were over 69,000. Other purchase services, we were over 215,000. I'll tell you the majority of that we were over was for charter schools. Supplies, we were down 28,000. Property are 700s. That's technology. Technology's in there. That's a big thing. We were over 238,000. 800s, we were under just a little bit, and the 900s, we were under just a little bit overall. So overall, we spent 613,000 over what we had said we were going to spend.
Could you run through those again? The salaries, I mean, is that just a mixture of the different?
That's everyone's
okay.
wages. That's everything. It's every 100 in the budget.
Okay.
So it's putting it all down into one.
Yep.
So you're seeing it overall, because a lot of times we'll move, like maybe we'll hire a special ed teacher instead of a regular ed teacher, or maybe a teacher will be out. Like we had the guidance out, which looked like we didn't fill that position, but we actually filled it with someone that we were paying as a long-term sub. So it made it look like it was coming out of regular teacher wages instead of guidance. So it, that this just kind of clumps it all together, and you can see the bigger overall picture.
And the 300 again?
Let me go back. That's going to be your IU services. Primarily.
And the 400?
400s are your electric, trash, those kind of utilities, oil. I don't know where oil was at that year. But that was all in Joe's budget, so I didn't really take too big of a look at it, because like I said, his budget was overall balanced.
Yeah, I just got behind you.
That's okay.
You were heading me, I was writing
I was
somewhere else.
going.
So I started making little notes, but I was halfway through. So thank you for going back.
Nope. 500s. Do you need 500s? Charter
Nope,
schools?
I'm good.
Okay. Oh, you're good? Okay.
You caught me.
Okay. So overall, our revenue came in at 1.5 million over what we planned. Different areas there, some of it local, which we can start working into our regular budget. Some of it is one-time funds, which we cannot count on, so we have to watch what we do there. Total expenditures overall were up 613,000, a lot of one-time expenditures there, like the whiteboards, and items like that were purchased due to COVID. So we came in at 690,000 over, and then we transferred that into our capital after our last board meeting. So this shows you the fund balance at the end of June 30th, 2022, but I will go back and say we did transfer that $390,465. So our fund balance is still at the $5,239,000 or oh my goodness, $5,239,131. And we still have that committed assigned there. That is assigned for Peasers funds. And then we have our unassigned, which is just below 4.9. And again, I will stress that we need to have conversations on how we want to assign that, and get that put to some use for future building projects. We have some, projects that we're going to be bringing to you. We have some little things that need to be done that should be coming out of capital. And we also have, you know, to go back next year and reevaluate our elementary buildings and, you know, the air conditioning in the elementary buildings and what we're going to do there. So we need to work on getting some of that assigned to projects so that we can get that spent down. And then questions.
Jumping back to the summary for a second, if I can characterize both of them higher than quote unquote expected, but in fact, we knew we were going to have revenues because of COVID grants. We just knew it was going to be, you know, the way we submit for reimbursement, the timing of it. We just happened because of submission for reimbursement, we got $1.5 million in this year. We also knew that we were going to be overspending and would be covering a lot of that overspend, quote unquote, overspending with COVID money. So really, yeah, we in a sense, it's not an overage in that we didn't expect it. We knew we were going to do it. But we also knew we were going to get money for it. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, so we did some supplanting with wages to get some of the COVID money so that we could be using it in the future for capital projects. That's why it was key that any overage would be transferred into the capital so that we can put money away for capital for the projects, because we know that we have that, and to take on large debt payments again is not something that we can do for quite some time.
Where is with the capital reserve, what's it at now, you know,
The
with the 390 moved over?
Yep, so then it would be back at the June 30th, 2021 balance. So you see that the June, look on your paper. And if you look at the June 30th, 2021, it would be back to the 5,239,000.
No,
He was asking capital.
capital reserve, not the general fund.
Oh, the cap, I don't have that right here in front of me. It's at 4 something right now because we still owe it money.
Which we put. We took. How much did we took 3 million out to pay?
I would have to pull up those documents. I don't
But
have
it's
it,
going back in.
but it's going back in over the next year. We have one more year on
in
that,
the current year, it's gonna go back in.
and in the next fall. We took it, we did one again in the fall of last year, because we did 2 of them, remember? We paid 2 off early. So.
Questions, Brandon? Okay, and then we'll move on then in the agenda items to the public comment section of the meeting, where residents and taxpayers may comment on matters of concern, official action, or any deliberation before the board. Each member of the public will be provided one unpaused 3-minute time frame. So if you'd like to speak to us, come up and tell us who you are and where you live. We'll offer this to those in the meeting room, and then we'll go to those in the I guess the cyber room, or whatever we're going to call that. Okay, not seeing anybody in here. Anybody online, if you would like to speak to us, you can raise your hand. And when I see your hand on the screen, I will open up the channel so you can speak to us. Okay, not seeing any hands there online, then we'll move back to the action items for the meeting this evening. A couple items to go over. Our first general item is that PSBA principles for governance that we signed last week, but I thought we needed to act on it in a formal manner. Signing it wasn't just good enough to endorse it. So there's no questions. I'll entertain a motion to that we adopt that. Move to approve. Second. Okay, any discussion or questions about it or anything like that? Okay, not hearing then, all in favor of adopting that, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Let's have it. And on to personnel, I recommend we combine P1 through P3. And so I'd entertain a motion to approve personnel items P1 through P3. Move to approve. Second. Any questions on any of those? Okay, hearing none, then all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. So that includes our action items. And after the action items, that's when we also go then to the public to offer comment. If anybody has any comments on perhaps anything we just did, or maybe something that's come to mind. So we'll open up a second comment section at this point for the public.
I just have a quick question. I met Mr. Higley back here, but my question is, what building was John Rupert at? Loyalsock Valley. Okay. And I do appreciate Brandy's explanation of the budget tonight. I just hope that I feel sometimes that it's a little bit too late now to say, like, we need to think about the finances, because now here we are. But in talking to some of the people in my neighborhood, I know there's one person that actually takes out a loan against their house to pay their taxes. And when the district needs to raise the taxes on the elderly, many times they can't pay their taxes and then they lose their homes. So I do hope that, in the future, we're thinking about that every time you say, I, and you say, oh, yep, they gave them something else, So, I mean, it's good that we're looking at it now, but sometimes we should have probably said no throughout the year. Thank you.
There's no one else here, then we'll go to those online, and anybody that would like to speak online, I'll look for a hand to be raised. Not seeing any hands raised online, then we'll close this portion of the meeting and move on now to some information items. It'll just be a discussion, no action, but a discussion on policy of 6. So, right? Yeah. Okay. So, Joe, do you want to bring it together so we can discuss it with some coherence?
Yeah, I think I'm going to turn that one over to Dan. Explain what we're looking at here.
Okay, so you have on the white copy paper, 006, which went through multiple approval. It actually was approved 3 times, and this is where it landed. It does not contain the language that the solicitor has suggested to be in it, and it doesn't really align with the law. And it has to do with primarily adding things to the agenda. So what you have in, I wish these pages, 1, 2, 3, on the 4th page of the white copy. Look at number 1, agenda. And the second paragraph under there, any additions or changes to the prepared agenda may be requested by the superintendent. Once the agenda for a meeting has been prepared and made public by the administration, no additional action items will be added to the agenda by the board for consideration at that meeting. That is not the case. The way the law is you can add, under certain circumstances, you can add items and vote. You can also take a vote to add an item and then vote on that item, which is how the spirit of the law is interpreted. So this contradicts the law. What I provided you on the blue sheets. And if you look. 1, 3, 4th page again. At the bottom in bold. Is the section on additions to the agenda. That aligns with the law and what should be in policy 6. That basically is the difference between the two policies. I know Richard would recommend adding that section. PSBA recommends having that section. I too would also recommend adding that section so it lines up with the law. And that's what it boils down to. So.
So then adopting this, then we would do we just
Yeah,
start
I
all
would
over.
bring back a
start all-
clean, yeah.
Start all over again with the first and second reading. Joe, any thoughts on this yourself?
I personally agree with Dan. So with what. The data provided and then solicitor is recommending.
It certainly is a little bit more tedious with language, but that's the way the regulations are written too. So it's what we have to deal with. You know, in a sense, there's really not a whole lot to say except.
I really thought we had been following that. I remember, can we add it?
It stalled,
Did
yeah. Stu had it and it was ready to go in the fall, and for some reason it didn't go. I don't know why. But it needs to go. And really, there's protection in here for taxpayers so that a board can't come to a meeting and say, well, we want to spend 500,000 on new gym floor. You can't just come to the meeting and do that. Now they kind of erased that at the end of the law where you could, but it's a heavier lift than just showing up. And somebody makes a motion to spend 500 grand.
We've had an occasion or two where actually we've acted on things and treated them as de minimis, but have actually voted to include them, even though they really were what they call de minimis, and you didn't spend money. There was nothing contractual about it. It was just, insignificant items, so to speak. All right. Okay, then Joe, you propose that, then we bring it to the board at the regular meeting in March to have an agenda item, okay?
So I will do that for next.
Okay, I guess, information, in the way of an information item, I said that, and it'll be in my CTC report, but we did meet the Thursday after the regular meeting, and we got to see some of the concepts that are being proposed. The takeaways for me at the CTC and what could be done down there are that there is no fast track. It's not tied into, I had the sense it was tied into Hughesville's construction projects. It's not. So I expect this to be drug out at a very leisurely pace, even to the point where next year at some point, the board representative at CTC might be bringing it back to you. I think it'll be discussed at very leisurely pace. The second item that is really important, the funding of projects like that. There's a real, I don't want to call it inequity, but I guess from a economic standpoint, it is an inequity. basically all districts kick in the same amount. So if you have 85 kids attending CTC and 25 attending CTC, you all pay the same amount for a construction project. That's in the charter, the bylaws. That's gonna change. And everybody recognized that that doesn't make any sense, that, you know, so that will change. So whatever, if something happens down the road in a construction project of some nature, you know, proportionally, Montoursville will really have a small piece of that action, because we send 25 to 30 kids. 2 or 3 other schools are sending 75 to 80. So they really have the lion's share of what happens down there. And to their benefit, they need it and they want it. In fact, the bylaws were trying to dovetail the bylaws so that Benton School District, which has left the Columbia,
Montville,
thank you, they have left them and they will be joining the Lycoming CTC. So they already have an attendance level that is greater than Montoursville. They're real excited to join. So we're going to be small potatoes down there pretty soon, folks, but that's okay. We have a lot going on up here that meet our technology needs. So that's my update. Okay, if there's nothing else, would like to adjourn to an executive session for safety and security. Go ahead, Dale.
Oh, we go. I did look it up, Randy, at our budget for this year. They were going to end at 6.5 million in capital reserve.
And I thought it'd gone to 6. I thought so too.
So I don't know whether that budget was finalized before the board acted to. We're moving money out of there and,
That was,
okay.
that's with all the money back.
Okay, so the 390 and all, I guess, the reality would say, because our intent is we're putting it back in, we're not saying no, we're not going to reimburse the fund.
I'll bring it, put on paper
We
for
could
you.
end up,
I'll put it on paper and bring it to the next meeting,
Yeah.
because without having it on paper, I don't know exactly what you're saying. So I'll put it out on paper and then we can talk about it there.
Okay.
Okay?
Yep.
Because I don't know what presentation you're looking at and I don't know exactly what you have in front of you there.
Yep.
So, because there are payments that get made back to it over $1 million in April or May.
yeah, I just took it off the final,
So but it's probably with all that put back into it.
yeah, okay.
Okay.
Second thing, in the last few weeks, there was an article in the newspaper that dealt with East Lycoming, and it was their school board meeting. And then they said that the last round of testing, so I took it to be the PSSAs, they had something like only, or not only, but they had 80% of their students not proficient in literacy. They were below proficiency. So that was what was prompting them. They were reevaluating the reading program. We're going to implement a new reading program. This prompted me to go back into the site futurereadypa.org and look at our scores. I just don't recall us really talking about those last year. So I'm wondering if there would be interest to have someone talk about those. If not, I did search around a little bit on some other districts' websites, and I found some of them had a link to that website, the Future Ready PA, on the district website. And one of them, I clicked on it and went right to that site. Just typed in Lycoming County, got Montoursville School District. Then I looked at the PSA scores from last year, on the site. I found it, okay, just my overview of it was, if I looked at the elementary schools, the scores were very good. In fact, later was just a little bit better. And I'm talking, reading scores, math scores that were verging, if not over 60% proficiency for both those, and over 80% proficiency in the science. But then when I looked at the middle school, again, reading, science looked good, but math was at 36. That only 36 kids were proficient. So again, it speaks to the fact that we're devoting time and energy, or I know Dan is, in implementing a new math program, which will, I hope, believe, have ramifications into, that score. And then at the high school, our scores were great, but I think Dan talked at our last meeting how there was some fluke in the scoring that the science, but we didn't really score. But those things would be corrected going, forward. But looking again at the math and the English, the scores, from my perspective, were very good. Certainly at or way above the state, and in some cases approaching the 2030 target for the state. So again, I find it interesting if anyone else does, and if you could say something to Dan, if we wanted to have a brief presentation on that, or wait until, well, we'll be taking tests, but you get this year's scores when, Dan? Next.
This year's we'll get in preliminary reports will be, depends on PDE. They're still working at home. Mid to late July, and then
So perhaps by the fall.
completely finalized in August, yeah.
Okay. I'll still be around. So I certainly would want to
I'm
hear.
hoping they bring them back to the office and they get a little more efficient, so.
Yeah. But anyway, if you want to, take a look at those, or again, I guess I'm kind of throwing it out there. I think it would be neat if our website had a link to it. And certainly any board member that was interested would have an easy way of getting to it, but anyone in the public that would want to.
we can put that link added. If you want a presentation, we can do that. As I caution you, that this data it's not real solid because of coming out of COVID and the hybrid situation, us closing church. We're still climbing out of that. I think this year's test score will reflect better, take a better snapshot of that day that they tested. But I can certainly present.
In this fall coming up.
Yeah.
But again, any other board member who's interested, want to say, take a peek at those.
We used to do that annually.
Yes.
Probably should.
Well, and we used to, I think even have a county snapshot, so.
Yeah.
I was always interested in, there are a few schools I like to compare us to, and then within the county, there's a few that I like to.
And make it a little harder to do that.
Yes.
You have to go into each
Yeah,
school on the.
there's,
future ready.
I haven't mastered it, but somewhere on the site, you can do a comparison.
You can.
Yeah, but it limits on, how many. I was just dinging on one, looking at the scores, writing down some things, and anyway, thank you for your time.
Okay, if there's nothing else, we go to the order. Obtain a motion to adjourn, and we'll convene then in a executive session for safety and security. And I think we can stay here. We would ask the captain of the guard to stick with us and to join us. So, gain a motion. Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Meeting is adjourned.